episode of Progress, Potential, and Possibilities, discussions with fascinating people designing a better tomorrow for all of us. I'm your host, Ira Pastor.
Welcome, everybody, again to another episode of our show with another fascinating guest who's helping to create a better tomorrow for so many people. Today, we have the honor of being joined by Mr. Arman Kashkinbekov, who is current Chief Executive Officer of the Association of Renewable Energy of Kazakhstan. He also serves as Deputy Chairman of the Board of the International Center for Green Technologies and Investment Projects in Kazakhstan. With a bachelor's degree from Karaganda University in International Economic Relations, a master's degree in economics from Vanderbilt University. He has also studied at the Kazakhstan-Japan Development Center and the Norwegian Petroleum Directorate. Mr. Kashkinbekov has broad experience across the oil and gas and mining industries, including roles as senior manager at KazMunayGas, deputy country manager at ConocoPhillips, executive director of KazEnergy, general manager of Rolls-Royce Energy, and deputy CEO of ArcelorMittal Temirtau. He has also worked at the President of KazInvest as the head of international affairs at the Sovereign Wealth Fund of Kazakhstan, Samruk-Kazyna, advisor to the chairman of the board of KazAutoZhol, and director of the Foreign Investors Council, chaired by the President of Kazakhstan. In addition, Mr. Kashkinbekov is also a graduate educational program at the President of the Republic of Kazakhstan, known as Bolshak, a co-founder of the Bolshak Association and an honorary member of its council. Has been awarded numerous medals by the Republic, and in addition to all those activities, also happens to be the director of the International Snow Leopard Foundation, interesting conservation organization, which we'll get into in a little bit. But in the meantime, Mr. Arman Kashkinbekov, thank you for taking the time to come on the show.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Thanks for sharing my intro to our viewers. There is a small addition to that. I also used to be head for sustainable development at UNDP, Kazakhstan.
Absolutely, absolutely. I appreciate that. I missed that one, but it was on here, but thank you. I'd love to start off just by, before we get into the theme of green energy, I'd love to just give you the microphone for a couple of minutes to talk about yourself. Obviously, if you could, most of the sort of the U.S. audience here knows very little about Kazakhstan, but if you could talk a little bit about yourself, about your background, everything from where you grew up, if you could introduce us to the Bolshak program, which you were integrally a part of in terms of not only your studying in Kazakhstan, but overseas, and a little bit of your early work in the oil and mining industries. I think that would be a great way to start things off as we go into renewables after that.
Thank you very much. Yes, my name is Arman, and I was born in the central part of Kazakhstan, Karaganda city, city of miners and coal workers and metallurgy workers. I graduated from university there more than 20 years ago. Now time flies. And then I had a unique chance to join Bolshak Presidential Scholarship. I think this is one of the tremendous success stories for our country during its 30 years of independence. And by the way, this year, 2021, it's exactly that anniversary, 30 years of independence. And I think I will be correct to say that Bolshak educational program was one of key successes. Why was it? Because it allowed more than 15,000 already graduates to attend good schools across the world. It started from Europe, Germany, UK, France, for those who was learning French language in their high schools, and for me, in my case, America. It was quite interesting because we didn't have any good internet connection back then. It was dial-up modem, 28 kilobit per second. We didn't have PC at home. It was a luxury to have it. My parents couldn't afford it because my parents are engineers and they worked during Soviet times and independent times fair. So the only computer which was available with dial-up modem was in Department of Economics in my university. So when I passed through the test of GRE, TOEFL, and the rest, and was selected by Vanderbilt University, which paid third of tuition costs. Still thanks to Vanderbilt for doing that. I was going to Vanderbilt.edu in this computer at university and was waiting for 1 hour or maybe 1 hour and a half for first page to load. And I didn't succeed because it was just logo, which was going, as it was before, from bottom to down. So I said, okay, I don't have patience. It's a good university. I need to go there. And that's how it ended up there. It was 2 best years in my life because student years are always the best. Far from home, 12-hour difference, strong university, good program, international community, American community. It was quickly growing up from a high school kid and from university student to professional because there was no one from Kazakhstan except me. And I was studying there, I was working on campus, I was traveling. So it was quite interesting life. And I think that gave me confidence that if you have a dream, if you have a goal, professional goal, you can achieve it. And the only obstacle is yourself. And that helped me throughout my career. As you have seen, I have been working at different organizations from United Nations to ConocoPhillips, Rolls-Royce, and other places. And I think my American education definitely helped me. That was followed by professional courses and study in Norway. I didn't expect it would be such a beautiful country. I thought it's the very north of the earth, but it's one of the most pleasant, friendliest country in the world. And I still miss it. I love it. I liked it a lot. And then with Kazakhstan-Japan Center. So that was my educational part. It was already some time. Maybe I need to take some executive courses. I don't know, to refresh.
Well, it's a fascinating background, and looking at your obviously your long history now in industry. You rose throughout many of the largest companies in the world, obviously oil, gas, mining, and then I can, as an outsider, look at online data. I see trillions of cubic meters of natural gas that you have, billions of barrels of oil in the Caspian region. Tell us what it was like when then you got the phone call or the email, whatever it was, and says, Mr. Arman Kashkinbekov, you are now going to be responsible for making Kazakhstan green. Who brought that responsibility to you? How did this fall in your lap? We'll get into the association in a bit, but obviously, here you are, a major hydrocarbon producer. What did you think when you first got that request?
The request came from the board of directors of this association. Is the only and the largest and leading NGO in renewable energy sphere in Kazakhstan. These guys happen to know me based on my previous job assignments and different organizations. And they said, since you have big experience in NGOs and associations, we think you can help us. So definitely I knew quite little about renewable energy. Kazakhstan is still planning to become top 5, top 10 oil and gas producer, even though the world is changing, we're still on that path. But year after year, and it was almost 5.5 years ago, in the middle of 2015, I accepted the offer. I became deputy CEO of association for a short period of time, then about half a year later CEO, and now actually I reside in the board of directors as honorary board member and honorary CEO, because myself and all the members, all the team helped for this session to happen. Then it was Expo, Astana International Expo 2017, international exhibition conferences, which happen across the world, and the topic was the future energy for Kazakhstan. So definitely that helped a lot as well, because renewable energy kicked off dramatically. As of last year in Kazakhstan, we see 3%. It was 0, now it's 3% of total electricity production output. I think it's quite an achievement, because 85 or 80% of our electricity output comes from coal stations, coal feed stations, which in most of those inherited from Soviet Union for free by Kazakhstan. And across CIS countries, I think it's the worst in green terms. structure of energy portfolio of the country, because even in with our Russian northern neighbor Russia, they have quite cleaner structure of economy with gas, with forests, with hydro, with nuclear. They still consider it's green. But in Kazakhstan, it's 80% of coal, plus the huge plans to evolve as a superpower in oil and gas, with 3 of the world largest deposits located in this country. But definitely good that we have the first president, second now president, who are saying that we should go in towards green economy. We have appropriate legislation, concept of Kazakhstan moving to green economy, specific law on supporting renewable energy sources. Now the new task is to develop law on support of so-called alternative sources of energy, meaning hydrogen, meaning gas-fed, or how it's called, gas-based methane, coal-based methane, industrial gases, waste to energy, all these other types of hydrothermal energy, which can help to further diversify our energy portfolio. Why it's important for us, for country, for association, and for myself, because Kazakhstan wants to evolve as one of top 30 most developed nations in the world by 2030. It's still only 9 years remaining. This pandemic doesn't give a clue if we will achieve that as well. But on the other side, it's not possible with 80% old Soviet-based coal stations to achieve that goal. And energy is driving force of the economy. It's like blood. So definitely, it was a challenge for me, but now after almost more than 5 years, I'm happy to say that Kazakhstan is going or correct way. We're experiencing increasing competition, which is always good for anyone or any country, from Russia, from China, superpower in that sense as well, and as well as evolving Central Asian neighboring countries as Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, and Tajikistan. I always say it's good we have strong and successful neighbors, because the Central Asia as a whole will evolve. And in Kazakhstan, it's 9th largest country in the world, so I mean we have a lot of sun. You see sun in my window. We have tremendous terawatt-hour unexplored potential of sun, hydro, wind, biomass, hydrothermal energies, and only 3% are on stake at the moment. So the next goal is 10% by 2030, and the final goal is 50% by 2050. But now our president presented another goal. Kazakhstan should become carbon neutral by 2060. With such structure of energy and heavy industries, metallurgy, mining, everything, it's quite a task for Kazakhstan, but I think we still have time, and we have ambitions, and we have support of the government, of people, of the NGOs to make it happen.
And I was going through, you gave a presentation, I think, in 2019. It was a global trends, it was entitled Green Tech and Investment Projects in Kazakhstan, and you outlined sort of wind, hydro, solar, and biomass, and sort of this 3% to 50% by 2050. Talk just a little bit once again for sort of the U.S. audience that may be a little less familiar, because it seems like you have projects in all of these now happening, as you said, across a very large landmass. Talk about a few projects, if you would, that you're most excited about on some of these fronts.
Yes, absolutely. For example, we have some projects which we call pilot projects, because they were the first in renewable energy. In each area of this, we have appropriate one. For solar, we have a very beautiful project, 100 megawatt Burne solar station in the south of Kazakhstan, supported and financed by EBRD, which is the European analog of World Bank. It's European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, as well as supported by national companies Samruk-Kazyna, which is sovereign wealth fund, its investment subsidiary. So the project evolved in 2 stages, 50 megawatt and then 100 megawatt. It's still very well functioning. There is a funny story behind that. When we were visiting the grand opening, the CEO of the station, who is a good friend of mine and their company is a member of our station, said, This is the first ever renewable energy facility in Kazakhstan. So traditional dispatchers from National Grid Operating Company were afraid that it may not work very well connect to the grid. And when he was connecting to the grid and supplying clean energy for several hours, they said, "Are you already connected? No problems solved." So it was a funny one. Now for wind, there is a big station north to Nur Sultan, previously Astana, the capital where I reside currently, called Temirtau Wind Power Station, 44 megawatt. The wind turbines installed there were from Germany, from the joint venture in Ukraine, Ferlander. Good for us, bad for them because the company went bankrupt because of competition from Chinese producers, Goldwind and others. And for Burner Solar, same story. The first 50 megawatt were solar panels from Germany of the company SolarWorld. And it also went bankrupt because Chinese competitors have taken the market. So the second 50 of Burner Solar was equipped with Chinese Jinko solar panels. So these guys, of course, playing a big role in renewable energy. They diversifying their investments not only inside the country, Greater China, but also outside in neighboring places like Kazakhstan. The other important trend which is happening in this area for the last 2 years is that oil and gas, well-known companies from around the world, America and European and British, which were already biggest investors in hydrocarbon sector of Kazakhstan, started to diversify by investing in renewable energy facilities. For example, Italian oil and gas giant Agip or Eni, they have invested into 100 megawatt solar power station, into 100 megawatt wind power station, and trying to even expand their portfolio more. British Shell was doing solar rooftop panels for high schools. They were also bidding for 100 megawatt solar projects, but the situation with oil prices, as far as I know, affected their decision making in that area. There are other companies as well from oil and gas and from mining sector. What a big surprise was for us, because several years ago they were sitting across us at the table in parliament or in government and saying, we don't need your renewable energy, it's too expensive. The Kazakhstan goods, works and services in our area only competitive because of low energy prices, electricity costs. For example, aluminum smelting. Who will pay salaries and taxes for tens of thousands of employees and their families? And that was true. But currently, as of 2021, all of the big 3 or 4 mining companies in Kazakhstan, ArcelorMittal, KazAchMys, ERG, and KazZinc, starting to diversify their portfolio by investment in renewable energy facilities, wind, solar, doesn't matter, for their own consumption. So that these companies also invest in that area. So if 5 years ago renewable energy was a thing that nobody wanted to deal with, now I think more and more people on all levels of decision making in the industry and in the government becoming green, clean and green. And I think with 3%, we're just at the very start of our long journey. We see what's going on worldwide. We know many interesting examples of renewable energy development from China, from Spain, from Germany, US. In the US, it's quite different. It's dependent on state, which state are we talking about, and this story with Texas and everything. But at the same time, of course, it's important to go ahead. It's important to replace phasing out coal stations, old one from Soviet times, with new facilities. New coal facilities are not available. No one is financing them across the globe. So that has to be gas power stations supported by renewable energy, maybe hydrogen to come as well.
And continue along those lines. You were just mentioning, obviously, the situation here and the various states. I sit here in Philadelphia in the state of Pennsylvania, and we have a huge, northeast of here, huge fracking sort of geography, which has been an example of how very small producers can get very rich very quickly. And it just made me think about sort of the smaller organizations. Obviously, you in the Association of Renewable Energy of Kazakhstan, you have a variety of investors, banks, and so forth, the Sovereign Wealth Fund, and so forth. What's the situation like for small sort of innovators as opposed to the large companies in Kazakhstan? Is there a good ecosystem yet for a small company that might want to start up in bioenergy or some other unique sort of more innovative field of renewable energy?
It's a good question. Yes, absolutely. As we have seen from the examples that I was sharing in previous part of the interview, Kazakhstan have succeeded with large scale, 100 megawatt, 50 megawatt stations. But going to small scale for small generation to be produced by households and small medium enterprises is still another task for the government, for association, because we're sure that will happen. The public support and understanding of clean energy will happen on that level, where every small business or household, as in America, as elsewhere, can produce electricity for his or her own home and then to sell excess of that to the grid and get money for that. And of course, after Expo, we have so-called company which was established by the government. The name of it is International Center for Green Technologies Investment Projects.
Mm-hmm.
It's a company which is working in that area of green technologies and small-scale projects. It's important for them because large scale has evolved. Now the turn is on small scale. Appropriate legislative base is required for that, as well as cooperation from KEGOC, which is a national grid operating company. I was bringing you example on solar, so they're not much different on household production of electricities.
Sure.
And of course, there's some changes in legislation required on a regional level, on a country's level, but I'm sure that this 10% that should happen by 2030 has to be done in majority by small scale generation. I know examples from America when at Expo there was one professor, Nobel laureate from Stanford University. He said 20, 30 years ago, all 99% of phone calls I was receiving in my home in San Francisco was appliances, phones, irons, whatever it was. Now 99% are calls from the companies willing to install solar panels on my house. So definitely this is next move for Kazakhstan. As for financing, it's a very important part. I would like to bring some clarity. It wasn't very affordable and accessible at the stage one of the renewable energy in Kazakhstan. Only several projects have received EBRD or Samruk-Kazyna funding. It wasn't wide scale because there was no investors which came later during auction scheme. Now the situation has improved. So before developers, investors were going circles after the banks, after their board of directors, and most of those projects were rejected on that level in London or elsewhere. But now the situation has improved because commercial banks finally turning their heads to small-scale renewables, development institutions, international banks still here, as well as export-import banks of China and other institutions. So the situation improved dramatically. For Kazakhstan, if you want to produce renewable energy electricity and sell to the grid, you have to win your part in auctions, which happen once a year at the end of the year, September, October, organized by Ministry of Energy and their subsidiaries. In case you would like to build up an employee facility for your own consumption, or you have take-off contract with any consumer of that electricity, government is not required. It's a B2B business. So in these two areas, the system will still be evolving. It's not just auction, the lowest bid wins, but it's also now moved to so-called project auctions when the fully documentation is available, government is doing its homework and then bidding this full documentation package to investors by lowering the tariffs, because the lowest one for solar was around 12 tenge, and now with the exchange rate of 435 tenge per $1, I think it's around like 3, even less dollar cents per kilowatt hour, which is already a good price, even in comparison to international standards and analogs. But the goal is to bring these prices from renewable energy even lower. And what helps here, as everywhere in the world, Kazakhstan is no exception, is dramatic decline in capexes, in capital expenditures, because the equipment is becoming cheaper. This Borno solar station, which I was mentioning, turnkey was around like 150 up to $200 million, 100 megawatt. And the latest one, which was went online 2 years ago, same size, 100 megawatt solar in near Almaty, southern part of Kazakhstan, turnkey was 70 million. So it's already declined in capexes by 2.5 times, which happened in Kazakhstan, not somewhere else but here. And that helps us a lot to further convince the public and the government that renewable energy is coming for long. It will be more affordable, more accessible. It's not this old story that renewable energy is a toy for rich countries to play with. No, it's now in development world. In Kazakhstan, it's happening.
And, continuing with that, obviously, you have this major responsibility, as mentioned at the beginning, of making Kazakhstan green, green again. But aside from that, you also have some very interesting conservation projects going on. You are the director of the International Snow Leopard Foundation, a beautiful species. It's in decline. It's, I think, on the IUCN red list. Talk a little bit about how you got involved with this organization. I understand they are the national symbols of Kazakhstan, but what are you involved in here in terms of restoring the population of this beautiful species?
My neighbor is doing some repairing work, so some noise is available as well. Sorry for that.
Not a problem.
Let me put my mic up so that I speak louder than this noise behind the walls. So International Snow Leopard Foundation is a unique one. It was established 2-3 years ago in Kazakhstan by a big entrepreneur who was interested in that kind of work. I think this is not helping, right? Oh, it's okay.
It's okay. I can hear you on top of it. I'll turn the volume up here.
Our goal is to create the first ever center for conservation, for rehabilitation, and for breeding of snow leopards in the mountains of Kazakhstan in Ilia-Alataau National Park in Almaty, which is a very mountainous, high mountains place of Kazakhstan. This is their natural habitat. The estimates of their population in Kazakhstan is varying from 120 to 150. Worldwide, there are several thousands. They live in 12 countries, from Russia, Kazakhstan, down to China and India. They need tall mountains for that. The majority of the population are in Himalayas of China, of Nepal, of India. But our center will be the first ever worldwide for snow leopards. Why it's important? In Kazakhstan, snow leopard is national symbol as an animal. Also, they are in our Kazakhstani and international red books.
Okay.
So they label them as endangered species.
Yeah.
So some work is required, even though it's a mixture of center investments, of science, and we would like definitely to start this project as soon as end of this year. It will be a governmental project, national project by government of Kazakhstan, Ministry of Ecology. Our foundation will be kind of operator, investment arm of this project. We invited UNDP, United Nations, WWF, World Wildlife Fund, and they are ready to help us. We already had communications with Russians, this national parks Altai, where snow leopards also live. So the goal is to create this center and to finally start increasing the population of snow leopards in Kazakhstan. You're absolutely correct. They're very beautiful animals. I think one of the most beautiful on earth. They have their relatives as leopards, which and jaguars and others.
Sure.
But but in Kazakhstan, snow leopards, as I said, is the main one. You know why? When I was explaining the project recently to the government, I said it's our national symbol. It's on a logo of political party. Norotan leading one, mayor office of Almaty, hockey club we have here, bars elsewhere. But what we're doing about this animals, it's 30 years of independence. Let's think about kicking off this international project. We will not go to all 12 countries this year. We start from Kazakhstan. We show that it's possible to do, even though I understand it's quite a challenging work, but we're optimistic about that. And then we will provide our services, presumably on rehabilitation of wounded animals, leopards from across this area. It's very important.
Very nice. So one other question, I'm gonna, in addition to you leading the charge in the region for renewable energy and green technologies, in addition to conservation, obviously the world comes to Kazakhstan now to head into space, as we don't do too much of that anymore in the U.S. Any other big events coming up in terms of that we should be looking at Kazakhstan from here in the U.S. outside that you can talk about? Obviously nothing confidential, but any other interesting facts, things that are going to be happening on the Kazakhstan front that you want to talk about?
Yes, well, actually, I have to be frank. I'm happy to be Kazakhstani. I'm happy to that I was born and grew up here. I traveled through half of the world, studying there on business trips. There are so many beautiful places worldwide. Some of them were already mentioned, but it's always good to go back home. East or west, home is the best. So we still love our Kazakhstan, even though it's such a big country that the spring is already booming in the south, but in the north, where the capital is, last week it was temperature was minus. So it's all starting to get warmer. So it's interesting to have such a diversity in the temperature, in nature, in climate of Kazakhstan. And we are only 18 million people. It's not a big country in terms of population.
Sure.
We are the largest landlocked country in the world. We don't have sea access except for Caspian Sea. So knowing all your disadvantages, of course, it's much more, I think, interesting and honorable to focus on possible advantages. And if we do something right in terms of renewable energy, on snow leopards, which part of biodiversity, these are why, at the first glance, they seem to be not interconnected things, renewable energy and snow leopards. But as we know, they all go to sustainable development of the country.
Yep.
Because snow leopards part of biodiversity. Biodiversity is a essential part of sustainable development. Sustainable development is also about green economy and green energy. So this paradigm of thinking, of mentality, is very important to be, I would say, incorporated in Kazakhstan and among our people. So in everything what we do in our families, in our lives, in our businesses, have some this effect of sustainability for their own families, for these people, and for the country. I'm sure that there will be many good news about Kazakhstan, but I think the first thing, of course, is to overcome COVID-19. Kazakhstan, unfortunately, was affected heavily by it. It's still going on around here. My wife is a doctor. She works as a therapist in the largest hospital of Nur Sultan. And the situation is not good, but of course, they're doing everything possible to cure these people who are sick. And of course, the first target for Kazakhstan, as for anyone else, for any other countries, to finally win over this coronavirus situation. I'm sure that the other good news will come after that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Arman, it's been really fascinating listening to what you're planning and what you're accomplishing. Really wishing you the best with all of this moving forward. For everybody that's going to be listening to this particular podcast on the network or watching on the YouTube channel. You've been listening to Mr. Arman Kashkinbekov, Chief Executive Officer of the Association of Renewable Energy of Kazakhstan, Deputy Chairman of the Board, International Center for Green Technologies and Investment Projects in Kazakhstan. Arman, I want to once again thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to talk to us for a little while. I want to thank you for everything you're doing there. And as we say on this show, thank you for helping to make things a better tomorrow, not just for Kazakhstan, but for the region through what you're doing. It's very inspiring stuff. And just thank you again.
Thank you very much for inviting me, and thanks for this opportunity to share views on renewable energy, sustainable development of my country, Kazakhstan. Even though we're far away from each other, the world is flat in that sense, and the world is united. So we should not be strangers to each other. We're all living on the same planet.
Absolutely. Great message. Be well.